My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags.
Paul Drabeck. We have a very, very, very special guest today. We have Pastor Lee. He's one of the co-defendants with Donald Trump. And then we have his attorney representing him to make sure I don't ask any bad questions or Pastor Lee doesn't give any bad answers.
Yeah.
It's David Shestokas.
Shestokas. Yeah, thanks, Terry.
I have now.
Yeah, it's Hocus Pocus, the great Shestokas.
Hocus Shestokas.
There you go.
Right?
Terry's
Yes,
great
There we
with
go.
names.
So, thank you everyone for watching. We really appreciate it. We're excited about having Pastor Lee here. We also want you all to look at the Give, Send, Go link on the bottom because we all have to come together to support him and pay for his legal fees. As you can see by David's suit, he doesn't charge a lot of money, but we do.
But it's something. It's something.
So, I'm on a serious note. He shouldn't be in this circumstance or situation. He is a victim of the weaponization of the Biden administration, just like I am or I was, and that's for another time. I was put on the domestic terrorist watch list for being a father and watching our president speak. So. This is ridiculous. It's absurd. We have the Biden administration going after Catholics, Lutherans, anybody that doesn't agree with them. They're going after parents, their adversaries, political adversaries, even businesses. And we have to stand up and fight, and we actually have to support him big time. Pastor Lee's not Donald Trump, so we really, really need you folks to please donate and please share this to hopefully get other people to donate. So thank you very much. We'll jump into our important guest here, but first we're going to have David introduce himself. Then we're going to pass it off to Pastor Lee, introduce himself, and he's going to give a little bit of his background for the audience so you guys understand more about him and who he is and some of the great things he's done in his life. So go ahead, David.
He's done some really terrific things, and I don't know that it's we need too much time to talk about me. I'm an attorney, as you know. Last year I ran for Attorney General here in the state of Illinois, so I was kind of behind enemy lines myself and in a battle in a different fashion.
Welcome to Friendly Ground.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here in Friendly Ground. So we're happy to be here. I can tell you that I've known Pastor Lee for about 3 years. We met at an event with a common friend, and we got introduced there. And then after that, we had occasional contact. But this last November, I think this is an important story to introduce what's going on with him. Last November, 2022, the Fulton County Special Purpose Grand Jury sent a subpoena to Kendall County, Illinois. They wanted to compel Pastor Lee to come out to Fulton County to testify before the grand jury. And for folks that don't know that, a grand jury's authority to make people testify before it ends at the borders of the state, unless you get an order from a judge where the target of the subpoena lives. And so they sent it out to Kendall County, and that's where Pastor Lee lives. We had so he called me. We got back in touch, and I represented him in terms of opposing his being compelled to go out to Georgia. And we had 3 hearings there in front of a judge in Kendall County. And at the end of the 3 hearings, the judge in Kendall County made a ruling. I think that's really kind of important for people to know. He ruled that the people in Fulton County, Georgia, had not even given him enough evidence to consider Pastor Lee a witness in their investigation. The judge literally entered an order, said, I find that there's not enough evidence to consider him to be a material witness in their investigation.
We're getting feedback there, buddy.
Yep.
Entered an order, said,
There's a little delay there.
that there's not enough evidence to consider him to be a material
It just started.
witness. So that was the finding of the judge in Kendall County, And so, and the judge not only did that, but he was fair, and he said to the folks in Georgia, Fannie Willis and this Judge McBurney that was running the special purpose grand jury, he said, you know what? You haven't given me enough evidence to believe that he's a witness, so I'm not going to compel Pastor Lee to go to Georgia at this moment, but I'll give you 30 days. I'll give you 30 days to bring me more. If you've got something that will convince me that he's a witness and important to your investigation. That 30 days came and went. They never did anything else. They never sent anything else. And then over the course of the next 10 months, they didn't reach out to me because I'm now counsel of record in the case in Kendall County. They didn't reach out to the Kendall County Court. They didn't reach out to Pastor. There was no effort, and of course, no effort to interview him anymore. And of course, I used to be a Cook County State's attorney. I ran a few investigations in my day. We always tried to talk to the potential defendant. You always tried to make an interview. I mean, you might not do it; it might not be successful, but you made an effort to do so. They made no effort to call him as a witness or to get any kind of statement from him or get any corroboration. And then on August 14th at about 10:30 at night, they rolled out these indictments, and Pastor Lee was among the 18 people along with President Trump. So we woke up on the morning of August 15th to find out that he was indicted, and we hadn't heard anything from them since November the 9th, which tells you how shabby the investigation is. And it also tells you one other thing. The only judge outside of Georgia to take a look at this stuff said he's not even a witness. So how could he possibly be a defendant? I think that's really, really telling. That backstory is really, really telling. And that's how we got involved. We'll talk about a little more things, but that's how I became involved in this long before the indictments. And
that sounds like weaponization right there. I mean,
yes.
Without justification, they're bringing some charges.
Without and the judge here.
Weaponization without justification.
I tell you what, they were trying to compel.
Just throw it at the wall.
I like it. It sticks.
Yeah.
Weaponization without justification.
You can make a shirt.
Yeah. No. What is
Al
that?
Sharpton.
No taxation without representation.
Yeah, well,
that's good. We're a
we're
couple
in
hundred
times
years.
that appear to be very similar to those times.
We are in times
ask me.
very similar to that. Someday
Right.
we'll talk about the Declaration of Independence. But that's the background on how I originally got involved in this. And now we woke up on the 15th of August to find out that he was indicted, and it's just an incredible miscarriage of justice. Actually, the subpoena process is actually weaponization. The
Right,
subpoena
right.
process, trying to drag somebody in before a grand jury, is something to frighten and scare them,
right.
and to compel submission to something.
Do they pay for travel for that?
You know what? They would have paid for some travel for him, but they wouldn't pay for his lawyer.
Yeah, right.
So, Pastor,
So here's Pastor Steve.
yeah, Pastor Lee, you want to give us a little bit about your background and law enforcement, not just yourself as a pastor?
Yeah, and thanks, guys, for having me on board here.
Thank you for coming.
This evening. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm a second career man. That's what I call it. My first career was and my Lutheran joke is my first career was in the law and my second one's in the gospel. But of course, both apply in both realms. In both realms, you're trying to help people, actually. If you ask a rookie officer what he or she is looking to do in law enforcement, they're looking to help people, looking to protect and serve. That's what we say. And that's why I got into it a long time ago, back in 1973, before you were born.
Yeah, that's true.
And you...
No, I was like starting my teen years.
He's one of us.
Yeah. And I was actually in training before my 21st birthday, so basically sworn in on my 21st birthday in Menlo Park, California, with the police department there, and working solo patrol as a reserve officer, basically a part-time police officer, but doing everything the full-time guys were doing. And that was my break into law enforcement. Then I went back to school, got my college degree in that period in the 70s, and then went back to work in law enforcement again. Wound up in Mendocino County Sheriff's Department, where I worked as an investigator, patrol officer, supervisor as a sergeant, major crimes, including all the way up to homicide investigations, and then applied for and was accepted to be a federal special agent with an agency. At that time it was called NIS. Now it's called NCIS.
Like a TV show.
Yeah, the TV show. And so I was a federal special agent with them, working out of then Moffett Field in the San Francisco Bay Area, and assigned to counterintelligence, foreign counterintelligence, counterterrorism in that work. But
Hold on a second. Are we working?
No, Rumble went stopped.
Rumble or everything?
Just Rumble.
So we're on. We're still on?
Yeah, just not Rumble. I'm trying to get Rumble up.
Okay,
All
so we're new at this, just so you guys, everyone knows it's our second episode, so we're having some growing pains. So keep going. We're still
Okay.
we're on the
we're
others.
still, and
Yeah,
we're gonna push
YouTube
the
and
recording.
Facebook and all
Yeah.
kinds of good stuff.
apologies
you,
to Rumble.
you were mentioning you were in counterterrorism, counterintelligence.
yeah.
Counterterrorism.
Yeah.
So this must look a little familiar. What's happening to you and all these other defendants?
Yeah, it's very interesting to understate it.
I think sometimes he's called it surreal.
Yeah, there you go.
surreal.
That's a good
Surreal,
word
you
for
know?
it.
Do I resemble a terrorist?
With the headphones you do, man.
So you terrorize me sometimes, but
Yeah.
The glass, yeah,
yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
You kind of look like you're hijacking a
Yeah.
plane there.
He terrorizes the Democrats. I'll tell you that much.
It is a stunning and shocking
Yeah.
thing in life. I've never had any kind of criminal record. Obviously, I've served as a law enforcement officer and then went into the ministry, and as part of the ministry served as a law enforcement chaplain for different agencies, including federal agency as well. And as a chaplain, I've responded to. I was on the ground at Columbine High School when that was going down.
Wow.
I was at Ground Zero in New York.
Oh, really?
Post 9/11, I worked with the United Airlines Flight 93 crisis team out of San Francisco Airport. I chaplained the crew that got the cross out at Ground Zero. That's part of the 9/11 museum today. If you walk through there, you can see that cross and where I wrote my name at the base of the cross, just over the railing. If you look at that, you can see where I wrote my name. Hurricane Katrina helped rescue about 100 people out of St. Paul Lutheran Church basement
Wow.
with the Louisiana National Guard. My goodness, mass shootings, tornadoes, more hurricanes, the hotel shooting in Vegas.
So you've lived to serve.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what this tells me is that you have a history and a track record of reaching out and helping. So it's not like Pastor Lee just popped up in Atlanta,
Yeah, and
to
all
do
this
He
stuff
has a
is-
history of
Yeah.
trying to help.
And all this stuff is documented. I've been very careful to document everything.
What brought you to the ministry, if you don't mind me asking?
When I was raised in a Christian family and wonderful parents, and they both had very rough childhoods. My mom was shot accidentally when she was a young girl, and she was not expected to live. She did live. My dad, when he was 17 years old, he was working in his uncle's gas station. He spent the night on a cot because he had to open up the store in the morning, the station in the morning, and 4 guys broke in and beat him on the head with a wrench, opened up his skull down to the brain, left him there to bleed to death. And he miraculously survived that. He served in the Navy in World War II. He got bombed in the South Pacific.
Wow.
When they met after the war, they made a pact that their children were not going to have to go through what they themselves went through. And they kept to that. And so I was raised in a loving Christian home. And when I was pretty young, as a teenager, I had the opportunity to do some summer church work in San Francisco. And there I was exposed to some of the rougher things of life, and worked at Potrero Hill area, Chinatown, the Mission District, and working with kids, underprivileged kids in those areas. And I really came to understand that personally, I needed a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, because ultimately the needs of humanity are spiritual in nature, and Christ was sent to answer those needs. And fundamentally, he went to the cross to win for us the free gift of salvation and forgiveness of sins. And then hope for eternal life, too, because in this life, sometimes some really rough things can happen, as we know.
Yeah.
And
You said
we
it.
have to be able to have something we can rely on and trust in besides circumstances, because circumstances can be a roller coaster.
Or government.
Well, that's part of circumstances,
Yeah,
isn't it?
right.
And so there has to be something that serves as a North Star that's beyond all of that, as
Absolutely.
a compass point. And so, yeah, my faith is absolutely foundational in my life. And it was when I was in law enforcement, and then in the ministry I've been involved with, both in the church and my chaplaincy work over the years. And it's key to my marriage. I've been married 46 years to my dear and long-suffering wife. And we joke, we say divorce never, murder maybe. But she hasn't killed me yet. But day isn't over yet. But yeah, I mean, it's faith is everything.
So what brought you to Chicago and why? And then, more importantly, are you tied to the Chicago outfit that could have led to the RICO?
Yeah, leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, not exactly a Chicago mobster. Anyway, yeah, I had a call to serve in a congregation in a church in the Chicagoland area, and came out here in 2012 with my wife. Served in that church for about 7 or 8 years, and now I'm officially retired, but I serve a church in the suburbs of Chicago right now as a vacancy pastor, part-time, and
Vacancy pastor part-time 3.5 years.
yeah, 3.5
3.5 years. It's not.
So,
Is that
in
because they're
this-
having a hard
this-
time finding? I'm just
Absolutely.
curious. It's just a hard time.
Yeah. And so, I say part-time, I say vacancy pastor, I say retired, but in reality, I am their pastor. And quite honestly, if something were to happen to me, I don't know what would happen with that little church.
Yeah.
Because I help subsidize the work there.
And a couple of weeks ago, he was almost in jail.
Yeah.
He was almost in jail.
and that's a
there's
good
a story.
segue.
There's a story behind that too. So we're
Well,
gonna
that's a
talk
good
about that.
segue, because I think we should talk about why you're here and what you're being charged with in this Georgia indictment. So I'll just briefly read the charges here. We got 3 charges. One's the RICO charge. That's like the overall charge. Oh, there's 5. I'm sorry. The article said 3, but I see criminal attempt to commit influencing witnesses. There's actually 2 of those, right? Because one's the neighbor and then one's Ruby Freeman. And then I see conspiracy to commit solicitation of false statements and writings, conspiracy to commit election fraud. So the person that you were attempting to contact was named Ruby Freeman. She's kind of famous, if people remember him. I guess I'll pass it over to David to kind of explain. She was the person that was on videotape that was taking a box from underneath the table. And,
Yeah, Paul. On
go ahead.
election
Go ahead,
night.
Doug,
On election night, they were counting ballots in the State
Right.
Farm Center in Atlanta, and they told everybody that they needed to leave. Apparently, there was some sort of fake
Pipe burst.
which apparently was an overflowing toilet someplace. At any rate, they told everybody to leave. All the poll watchers, both the Democrats, and the Republicans. And Ms. Freeman and apparently one other person, which from what I understand might very well have been her daughter, was stuck around in this place where they were counting ballots. And the closed-circuit television cameras continued to run for that facility. And after everyone else had left, Ms. Freeman went under the table that had a skirt around it, pulled out this big box, and then opened up the box and started running ballots through the ballot counting machine. And it appears as though she did ballots 3-4 times. That's what it looks like on the video. And she became relatively famous for that video. That video went viral. And there was a whole lot of people who were saying maybe 15, 20, 30,000 votes were run through that evening.
And so, Pastor Lee, you had tried to contact Ruby Freeman after that, because this was a big story, right?
It was
David?
a huge
big story. Everybody knew about it. Went viral instantly.
It was a huge story.
Trump fans were all,
Yeah.
this is clear evidence of election fraud, right?
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, it looked like it if you look at
It's
the tape.
one of those things. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
And I'm not
yeah.
saying it's true. We don't want to have anybody to accuse us of conspiracy theories, right? But
Well, within the RICO charge, there's 41 counts. Within the whole indictment, there's 41 counts. One is the overall RICO charge,
Right.
which involves all 19 defendants.
Could you explain RICO for
Yeah.
people that might not be
Sure,
familiar?
sure, absolutely. It's called Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act. There's a federal act that was from the 1970s, and in 1980, Georgia enacted their own RICO law within the state of Georgia. And RICO was, generally speaking, designed to look after. You were talking about the Chicago mob. You mentioned something about the possibility of Pastor Lee being a mobster
that's
of some
how
sort.
Rudy took down the mob in New York, right?
That's exactly what Rudy used to take down.
How ironic it's getting used on him now.
Yeah. And
A lot of my friends too here in Chicago.
they took down your friends? Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Goomba. Yeah.
What am I getting myself into?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Should I be here?
Probably not.
Do a little confession.
You're going to take confessions. No, that's the wrong church. At any rate, but it's designed for mobs, designed for street gangs,
Right.
drug cartels, so that they can get at the higher ups, rather than
Right,
just the
right.
street people. They can drag everybody in. That's part and parcel of this criminal enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, engaged in illegal activity, and so that's the RICO law generally is what it's put
Mm-hmm.
together, and so they can take a lot of disparate, different actions and pile them all together as one thing.
The inference is conspiracy to, right? They're conspiring together to
They
commit.
say, they keep saying that, but you know what? That's a different law.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
let me jump in here a little
Conspiracy
bit.
is
I know
different
what
law.
they're, so
Go.
I think I know what they're trying to do here.
Oh, go for it.
So they're trying to get the lower end folks. Have you ever met Donald Trump?
No.
Have you ever met this Ruby Tuesday or whatever her name is? Have you met her?
No.
Yeah.
Mick Jagger either,
A
yeah.
lot of times in this RICO Act too is they throw everybody in there. You probably know this better than I, right? And they try to scare people.
Yeah.
Even if they're tangentially involved, right?
Right.
And get them to run down to Atlanta or say, oh, I know this, this, and this, and hope, right? And they'll throw you in with this, even though they probably, they probably don't think they got a great case, but they were reaching, I believe, to try to scare Pastor Lee into maybe saying something that they could use against Trump or others in the
That's a
conspiracy.
fairly standard prosecutorial conduct when you're trying to get at a big organization. What's that?
I told you.
Telling you,
Yeah, he knows because he's one of the kingpins.
Getting his law degree over here.
He's a kingpin, and he keeps that deniability. So that's why he's got all his all his low level guys that don't even know he exists.
But to his point, I mean,
That's-
one of the things they try to do is get, like you said, the lower level people to flip, right?
Right.
So, and you just kind of try to knock down those dominoes on
yeah,
the way
but
to
you
the
know
top.
what? That's you kind of try and do that. I've been a prosecutor, and you kind of try and do that. You don't have to do a RICO charge
Right,
to do that.
right, sure,
You can just arrest people
Sure.
for whatever they're doing and say, "Listen, I'll give you a break if you flip on the other guy." To throw everybody in on a RICO thing is extraordinarily complicated.
And this is a unique situation. Like with drug dealers, you probably know that back in the day, right? You start your way and work your way up. I think this is like a broad net from the PR perspective, right?
Right.
Trying to scare different people. You keep hearing all these other people are going to flip now and all this crazy stuff. And I think that's just a tactic, right?
I don't know what I don't know what it is. Speculation is that, of course, that it is really all about keeping Donald Trump occupied.
Yes. Right.
It's more about President Trump. But that being the case, the RICO charge itself carries a mandatory minimum 5 years in a Georgia state prison, up to 20. And as I've told other folks, regardless, you mentioned there's five charges against Pastor Lee, two of which were relatively related to knocking on doors.
Yeah.
Two of which are for being on a couple phone calls.
Right.
Okay. The other one is the general RICO charge, and while it sounds silly, can you imagine for the next year or however long this takes, going to bed at
The
night
stress. Oh, my God.
and getting up in the morning
Open
and
your
thinking
eyes in the morning, thinking about first thing you wake up, right?
whatever, and I'll let him talk about his faith.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that might be the time. This might be the moment to talk about his faith.
But before Pastor,
Go.
just to clear things up, and I think you mentioned earlier, Terry, Pastor Lee, you never actually spoke to Ruby Freeman,
No.
right? Okay. And you've never spoken to Donald Trump,
No.
Rudy Giuliani, any other of the co-defendants? Okay. Did you want to say something about your faith?
Yeah, I'm glad I have it
Right.
during this time because I need something that goes beyond the circumstances.
Right.
Because the circumstances are terrible.
Yeah.
You know, I have a wife, 46 years. I'm a parent. I'm a grandparent. I'm 70 years old. You know, when the morning that we were going to fly down to Atlanta so I could be booked in Fulton County, I gave Dave, my attorney, a written list of things that I was going to need as an old guy in custody. And, you know, that's not a healthy environment for a 70-year-old.
Especially that institution itself.
Oh, yeah, they're under federal
it's
investigation.
awful. If any of you don't
Yeah.
look it up, it's awful.
Fulton County Jail.
And
We need Johnny Cash to write a song.
yeah, my church was looking at not having a pastor for that Sunday. Now, you know, as I mentioned before, I may be retired, I may be considered vacancy pastor, but I'm the only game in town for this little group of people, and so they're looking about not having a church. The stress of this is, of course, remarkable. And so back to the full circle to the faith thing is that my faith really does make a difference. If the Lord were to allow me to go to prison, I would continue serving him right there. Obviously, though, that would be a terrible outcome and tremendously unjust and wrong. And at the same time, though, I do not look to the world for fairness on things.
Not a lot of that
I look
these
to the
days.
Lord, but the Lord is on his throne. God is on his throne, and I trust him. Whatever happens, I trust him.
So speaking to the unjustness of all of this, David, I want you to help me out here with the legal aspect of this, okay? I'm going to read a little bit from the indictment because I'm having a hard time understanding how they get from point A to point B here. So it talks about how Pastor Lee traveled to Georgia to try to talk to Ruby Freeman, and it says, with intent to knowingly engage in misleading conduct toward Ruby Freeman by purporting to offer her help and with intent to influence her testimony in an official proceeding in Fulton County, Georgia, concerning events at State Farm Arena. So I'm no legal scholar, but as I understand it, proving intent is pretty difficult unless it's overt.
Unless you have a confession.
Unless you have a confession.
Unless you have a confession, you can also prove intent by circumstantial evidence. But
Sure.
knocking on doors is not intent to do all those
Right, and
things.
especially if he hadn't even spoken to her.
Never did.
I'm not sure. I don't understand how they can assert intent in this instance. Is
Well,
this
they can.
just?
They just got to prove it. I mean,
Well,
right?
Yeah,
They can-
there you go. They can
Well,
assert anything
yeah,
they
they
I'm
can
want.
not sure how they
whatever they
can
want.
prove it. Right.
Yeah, and certainly that's going to be their
But
job.
Does that hold up to scrutiny in terms of as a prosecutor?
We hope
Would
not.
you ever bring?
I would never bring such a charge. There's a whole bundle of these charges I would never have brought.
Right.
As I think it was beforehand, we're talking. You're reading his two counts, two of his counts, but in terms of the background of the indictment, they mention 161 overt acts.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That they say are in furtherance of the conspiracy, which, by the way, is not the language of RICO. The language of RICO is a criminal enterprise.
Right.
Yeah, there's conspiracy law and there's RICO law, and whoever drafted this drafted it in the language of conspiracy law, and it's very, very difficult for me to actually say that they're going to be able to defend it because they have to follow. They're charging RICO, but they're calling it conspiracy.
Dave, we know they don't care. They don't care.
No, they don't
it
care.
has nothing
It's-
to do
it's
with
not-
the fairness or following the letter of the law. They
And
don't
I'm not
care.
even sure it's about having convictions.
Yeah. No.
I'm not. It's about tying everybody up.
Oh, that's nice. Let's spend a lot of taxpayer money on,
Yeah.
a big clown show.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and then beyond that, the false statements.
Right.
And that not just on his part, but throughout the indictment, the charges on the false statements regarding fraud. So, I'm not sure I understand how they can. So they
overt
say
act,
false
overt act number one. Go to overt act number one. Overt act number one is President Trump the day after the election. The election is on November 3rd. They claim that on November 4th, President Trump gave a speech falsely claiming that he won the election.
So I want to stay there.
That's
right.
right. That's
okay.
okay.
Because look, what they say is people are making false statements about election fraud. Well, okay, and they're charging people with that. Isn't it incumbent on the accuser to prove that these statements were false? They can't prove that there was no fraud. I mean, that would mean, to me, that would mean if they were to prove that, we'd have to see, a forensic audit of the election to show, like, hey, look, this person voted this way. That's proven. There's no fraud, or at least there's not fraud that could overturn the election. So I don't know how they can say they made false statements about fraud. They can't prove that unless they want to try.
That's why I want to point out it gets worse from the first overt act. The first overt act says President Trump falsely claimed to win on November 4th. On November 4th, I was still in Pennsylvania. They were still counting votes.
Well,
I was still having hearings before electoral boards of individuals who had been forced to cast provisional ballots, who said, no, I hadn't voted. They'd showed up to vote, and they told they couldn't vote because somebody voted in their hand. And I held 600 hearings on that. And so that was all going on. So how can they say the day after the election, President Trump falsely claimed to have won? They can't.
They can't say it now.
They can't say it now. They couldn't say it then.
Yeah.
And so that's overt act number one.
It's like when
so
they
the
went
whole thing's
around.
insane.
It's like when they went around the media saying he lost all these court cases. That proves it. Well, number one, he didn't
Procedural.
lose. They were. Most of them weren't.
I'll come back and we'll do a show about that because I actually was in a couple of those cases.
But they did. Most of them got dismissed on standing. Right. That
Procedural. Isn't it procedural?
They got
rules and
dismissed because the
guidelines?
judge had indigestion.
yeah. Right.
You know?
Right. Well, but I mean, my point is, you didn't lose if you can't even present your evidence in court, right? Like
I was
weren't
scheduled to testify in a case in Williamsport, Pennsylvania on a Tuesday. At the end of that, I was in court. I was scheduled to testify on Thursday. I was in court on Tuesday. At the end of the day on Tuesday, the judge canceled the hearing that I was supposed to testify at, and on Friday he dismissed the case. Never heard a word. Mm-hmm. And that's the way the 60 cases went. I'll come back and do a show about that. In the meantime, give, send, go, because Chaplain Lee, because I want to tell you about this. We went down on the day we went down to have him surrender. He didn't know that he was going to come home that night, that Friday, when he got up that morning, because here's another backstory about this. The prosecutors, when you're seeing the folks go in and out, they're saying that the defense counsel is negotiating terms of surrender. There wasn't any negotiations. Okay, we had a meeting, and they said, okay, here's conditions of bond, all standard stuff, stay out of trouble, go to court when you're supposed to, et cetera, et cetera. We got to the end, and they said, yeah, his bond is $75,000. I said, he doesn't even own his house. I said, and they said, well, it's 10% to apply. I said, he doesn't have $7,500. I said, he's a former law enforcement agent. He's a minister. He's
no record.
No record. He's not a flight risk, and we'll get him to court.
Yeah.
They said, oh, we don't care. I said, well, if he doesn't have it, they said, well, we'll send out the fugitive warrant team. And
Who was this with?
That's the prosecutors in.
Now, what about the judge? You can't. I mean, I know you can ask for a downward.
Well, the deal was this went first, and then we could go to the judge after he surrendered. Yeah. That's how this stuff worked in Georgia. Yeah. So anyway, through the good offices of the folks at the Illinois Family Institute, Dave Smith and those guys were stepped up, and they started a fund for Pastor Lee. And this was on Tuesday. He's supposed to surrender on Friday. And they started a fund for Pastor Lee on Monday. And by Thursday evening, $4,000 had been contributed. He needed $7,500. I did a podcast Thursday night with somebody most people here will know, Silk of Diamond and Silk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was on a podcast with Silk. And I was explaining the situation and that they were saying, yep, he's going to... And Silk says, does that mean Pastor Lee is not going to be in church on Sunday? I said, it pretty much looks like that. It pretty much looks like he's going to be in custody down in Fulton County Jail. She says, Pastor Lee needs to be in church on Sunday. I'm going to get you the $3,500 that he's short so that he can bond himself out. Now this is Thursday night. Her show is late. He was just on there maybe he was just on with her a couple nights ago, and so that he could thank her because he had already gone to sleep because we were flying out at 5 a.m. To Georgia. So he went to bed thinking he was going to jail. And then he was on the way to the airport. I called him and I told him what happened overnight. And his daughter was driving him, and I could hear her scream because it was on the car audio, and that her dad was not going to jail that night. But we only had one-way tickets, because I thought, well, he's going to go to jail. It's going to be a Friday, and I'm going to have to stick around to get to see a judge. Mm-hmm. And of course, this was going to be Friday, so I'm probably not going to see a judge till Monday. The way things work, and so I was planning on staying 3 or 4 days, and so we only had one-way tickets, and then ultimately, she put that through, so got that through to us, and we were able to bond him out that
awesome.
Afternoon. So that's just a wonderful
That's
story.
great.
And so a couple of days ago, he was on with her and was able to say things. I don't even know, how did things go with Silk a couple nights ago?
It was wonderful. I told her I owed her a big pastor hug, and she went like this. Yeah. No, it was great to be on there and tell her from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of my family and that we just appreciated that so much.
I got a quick message for Sal.
Yeah.
So you guys sent me a private message on Getter saying, "Oh, we like your story. We want you to be on the show. Gave me your email." That was like 2 weeks ago. They reached out to me on their own. She did. Sent me a message on with their email address. And
fantastic.
So I don't know if
do
your
a
email
podcast,
broke or
huh?
what, but you did reach out to me. I didn't reach out to her.
I said, absolutely. We have her number.
Yeah.
We have her number. We can do that. But she was fantastic.
My mom loves them, by the way. She bought the shirt. My mother loves them. She loves Liddell, my ex-Democrat. My mother, ex-Democrat for almost 3/4 of a century. Well, no, not quite that much, but she loves them.
Well, I'll finish up with that story because of the give, send, go. You said, you're right. I don't dress all that fancy. But
I'm a Southsider. Who am I to make fun of, right?
I grew up at Midway Airport. I was St. Simferosa, man.
I'm goofing around.
I was St. Simferosa guy. I would still do the parish thing.
What did I say?
Do the parish thing, right. Chicago folks. But at any rate, because, of course, we didn't, we thought we only had one-way tickets, and then eventually during the afternoon I was able to get us a flight back to Chicago. And so $1,200 for us to go.
Burn that out, yeah.
Because you don't get to shop for your airfare, right?
Right.
You get when you go to and from court, you're there when the judge or the other people tell you to go. So when it comes to what's going to happen over the next 6, 8 months, year, whatever it takes, it's going to be expensive.
Did you fly too down there?
Yeah, we flew on the same
You
flight.
didn't have a pre-checker? Did you ever have? I'm asking.
Oh yeah. Tell that story.
Yeah, so so I'm no longer a domestic terrorist, but they did as a baby punishment took away my TSA pre-check I had for a decade. Right, I'm an executive platinum flyer, and so I got off the terrorist list, but I lost my pre-check privileges, and then I just read today, Sidney Powell, they took hers away. She's just like you. You're not convicted of anything.
No.
Right? So they took it away as a punishment. And, our politicians, Matt Gaetz and all you guys out there, you got to look into this. Like, I thought you're innocent until proven guilty, right? And, I don't think you probably flew around that much as a pastor.
Well, they're trying to change that, by the way. There's a lot of Kavanaugh story, now the Russell Brand thing, the pulling them from YouTube. That's the whole movement is to make people look guilty and then try to have, society frame them as guilty before they're, and have them prove themselves innocent, which is totally
There's a
backwards.
problem. We'll go back to, but I just wanted to say that's the kind of expenses that he's looking at, because
we got to raise some money.
Send, go.
Yeah, we got to raise some money for Pastor Lee, right? Because it's the right thing to do. But I know, this is a new show, as you know, right?
Yeah.
We're getting, good viewers for a new show, but people who are watching, please share this and then tag Donald Trump on Twitter.
Yes.
You know, because
At real
Donald Trump Jr., the whole family, and you know what? You know, Trump said they're going after him for us. He said that, right?
Yeah.
They're going after Pastor Lee for Trump. So, Mr. Trump, you got a lot of cash. You ought to look up that Give, Send, Go. So tag Trump on that Give, Send, Go thing, and Trump come up with some cash because they're going after him because I'm on Trump's side. I love Trump. But you got a lot of cash, man. So you're popular, you're out there. Give some cash to Pastor Lee.
There you go.
Well, so if we want to go back in the, we didn't even get a chance to, Pastor Lee, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about what happened back then, because I know you went down there saying you had the intent to influence her. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
The fact is that's what they're going to have to prove. You know, that's part of the state's case and something they're going to have to prove. And guess what? We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, that's where the lawyers
Do you have a
upset.
TikTok account?
Me?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you were trying to influence that Ruby chick.
Oh yeah,
another dumb joke.
yeah. He's a TikTok influencer. That's exactly right. He's
Yeah, I can't influence my own kids.
He's got this
Right?
he's got this collar deal on the side.
Yeah.
You know, they autograph collars and stuff. There is a little bit of it on a more softer, salient note or whatever. You went through some of the things that he's been involved in, including 9/11, including the Pulse nightclub. But I think it might be worthwhile because he has told me that the thing that moved him the most of all those experiences was Vegas.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Could you share with them?
Yeah. I helped out with the Mandalay Bay mass shooting situation down in Vegas, hooked up with the Bureau, the FBI down there, Chad Bledsoe. He was a supervisory special agent at the time. I think he's retired now, but helped him and his team down there. Went to the various places where they were having the families and friends come and was providing pastoral care for those folks, like at the Las Vegas Convention Center. And the scale of this thing was just horrific. And so when I would walk on out there at the crime scene, of course, it happened at this venue where they're having a concert and people were fleeing for their lives with all that gunfire coming down from way up high in the building. He'd broken out a couple of windows and was shooting down at the crowd. And in the middle of this venue was a motorized wheelchair. And I was wondering what happened with the person who was in that. There were all these cell phones that people had dropped, all kinds of bags and everything laying around, but cell phones. And the cell phones, when the forensic teams, the folks who are working that scene, they were having to listen to these phones go off constantly. Why? Because people were trying to locate their family members. Right. And they would ring and ring and ring until finally the batteries would go dead. But how many hours did they have to listen to that constant ringing? I followed a set of bloody footsteps, bare footsteps, bloody ones that went from that venue area across the street to where a Catholic church was, where somebody tried to take refuge in a Catholic church. Yeah, it was horrific, that kind of scale. These are the kind of things I've been involved with over the years. 9/11, working the World Trade Center site, 16 acres of utter destruction, and working with folks there, the USAR teams, the urban search and rescue teams. I coordinated 24/7 chaplaincy coverage for them at the Jacob Javits Center, keeping the guys and the gals in the fight. You know, they were trying to find people who had survived, and so they had special capabilities with cameras and dogs, search dogs, and of course they didn't find anybody after that initial day or so. And so it was very, very hard for these workers. And even the dogs were getting depressed.
So you're offering sort of like a grief counseling
Right,
through
right.
faith.
So
in these
for
situations?
instance, and I would walk ground zero with my collar to be identified and my identification. I had identification there. And as a for instance, one evening I was there, and some workers came on up to me and they said, "Hey, chaplain," he said, "there's this lady over there, and she's an immigrant. She's from Colombia, and she's working, oiling or greasing the machinery that's working here, and she's really traumatized because she was out walking, and she saw something on the ground. She reached down, picked it up, and it was the inside of half a human face."
Jeez.
And it completely, obviously, would traumatize anybody.
Yeah.
So I spent probably 3 hours, 4 hours talking with her, praying with her, encouraging her. There was one worker going into the Red Cross respite center, and they had a wash down station, and he's washing down his boots, and he found a human tooth in it. I talked to some guys, firefighters, one evening, and one firefighter had a teddy bear tucked underneath his arm that he'd found out, what they call the pile. John Siciliato, he was a worker down there. He helped the team recover the cross that's in the 9/11 Museum. He passed away in 2006 because of breathing all that stuff. I'd go back to where I was staying at Concordia University in Bronxville, which was it was outside of Manhattan, and it was calmer up there, and a nice college campus and greenery and stuff. And it was a good place for me to go after working 16, 18, 20-hour shifts down there at ground zero. But I'd get up there, and before going to bed, I'd blow my nose, and all this black snot would come out from breathing all that stuff. And it killed John Siciliano. It killed him. My wife and I, years later, we visited with his widow, Carol, and she was an invalid. She was in a wheelchair, and she'd never been to the 9/11 Museum. And Elaine and I, my wife and I, took her to go visit the museum and took her to see the cross that her husband had helped recover. And so there's just all kinds of stories from all the years.
So, and this is the guy they're trying to send to
I was
prison
just
for
gonna
5
say,
years.
So this is what the government's trying to do.
Yeah.
They're going after this guy.
One. I'm going to on a lighter note. I think we've got a very happy hurricane story. With the
Katrina?
not that one. I think it's Harvey. No.
Oh, Hurricane Harvey.
Harvey. Yeah, he was at Katrina too. Just by the way, Katrina, Irma, Harvey.
Katrina was the one where we got the 100 people out of St.
the
Paul's
church.
Lutheran Church. Yeah.
But the recovery of the people on the roof in the flood and whatnot.
Oh, and
Yeah.
Oh, on Harvey.
Yes,
Yeah.
Harvey.
Yeah. Well, with Hurricane Harvey, and that had like 3 or 4 times the water that Katrina had. Harvey was just a deluge. It was like Noah's flood. It was like looking out over a lake in a lot of these places. And one of the things I did and will typically do is take water to people who need water, because in those situations, the water supply gets cut off, or it gets contaminated. And so I'd get bottled water and bring it on in. So I was doing this with rest homes in East Texas there, and they were isolated. And I wanted to avoid the scenario that you may remember that happened in Florida, where there were rest home folks who died because they didn't have what they
Is it
needed.
Andrew?
No, that wasn't Andrew. That was it was later than that. But there were folks that passed away because they didn't have the water that they needed, or the help that they needed. So anyhow, I was taking water into these rest homes, and where they didn't have running water, potable water, they were having to boil it. And the one place that had like over 160 inpatients there, people who could not get out of bed or were very, very restricted in movement. And of course, they were very happy to get the water. And then I was driving out of there, and my GPS took me out a different route. So I found myself bailing out of my window in my SUV. And I was climbing out thinking, you know, I'm going to be 65 here and going on Medicare. Is this a smart thing for a 65-year-old dude to be doing, climbing out of his SUV window?
And you can't always count on GPS, apparently.
Yeah, and it's tried killing me a couple of times on these deals, and it can be dangerous situations. And there was a Houston police sergeant who died in it was Harvey, I think, where he was going underpass and got trapped in underwater in his vehicle, and he passed away. He died. So yeah.
So you've seen your fair share of tragedy.
I've seen more than my fair share of tragedy.
So in that sense, I mean, I know in the spiritual context, there's the idea that we have a meaning, we have a purpose in life, and I know a lot of the government going after our First Amendment rights and our religious freedoms kind of wants us to believe that there isn't that everything is kind of random. What is that purpose and meaning for you? What has that done for you in this time while you're facing this persecution?
My job, my calling, my place, my purpose in life is to do what I was put on this planet to do. To help, to serve. I remember my parents and what they gave me. I feel a great sense of responsibility that I had a very privileged childhood compared to a lot of people in this world. And that with that comes a responsibility to help others. And that's what motivates me. And I can't speak to specifics of this particular case, obviously. But what I can say, and I think my track record shows it, is that I've been very faithful. Nobody's perfect. I've got my issues like everybody else, but I have a track record of helping people. And I have a track record of integrity. I have a track record of doing the right thing and trying to serve what's right and good and helpful to the community, to the society, to the country. And I'll stand by that.
Well, thank you for everything.
And we'll let the consequences happen, however they happen.
So, Dave, in your without releasing defense strategies, right? And I don't know if this gets thrown out ahead of time. Who knows? But like, are there witnesses like some of these scumbags that are in this circle, this Democratic crazy circle, and allegations that are being leveraged? I think to support the prosecution trying to come up with this stuff. I mean, there's people you get to put on the stand to question, to drill, to go after their integrity, or is it something you can't talk about now?
Well, I can say that there are already subpoenas out publicly in terms of developing the case that Ms. Freeman actually was engaged in illegal activity at the time. They've not come from our office. They're not coming from us, but they're obviously already public record. The efforts to see what happened for the 2 months that she was essentially hidden by the federal government, the communications there, and what agents were involved in that in terms of cross-examining those folks and that kind of thing. Certainly, we're still entitled to. We're supposed to get 2 terabytes of discovery. And that's due to us on the 6th of October. Once we get the 2 terabytes of our discovery, then we'll have a better idea of what it is, where we're going to go, what we have to look at. But I suspect that there's not going to be a whole lot in terms of attacking people, because what they have to do is they have to prove that this guy is a racketeer.
Right.
They have to prove that this man's a racketeer.
So on that note, I mean, I think a lot of people have, and a lot of legal pundits and lawyers I've seen have called this lawsuit out for what it is, an open attack on the First Amendment.
Oh,
and
You know, if I may, Paul, just one second. The First Amendment has actually 5 rights in it.
Right.
Everybody,
Yes.
you know?
Absolutely.
There's religion, there's press, and there's speech, and there's
Petition.
assembly, and petition the
Right.
government for redress of grievances. Of the
we
115,
got a little problem with that in Illinois. Them going after that stuff too.
yeah. Well, I got another
we oughta
election
talk
lawsuit.
on that,
I
too.
got another election lawsuit on appeal where they're trying to bill me for $35,000, saying I'm frivolous. But that's
right.
that's a whole separate. I'm going to come back a couple of weeks in a row. We got all kinds of stuff to talk about.
Oh, we'll
but
have
this
you back.
case. The president's giving a speech. That sounds like First Amendment speech, right? Pastors knocking on doors. That sounds like religion. Oh yeah, okay. We've got let's see, some folks lobbying state legislatures. Does that sound like petitioning the government for redress of grievances?
Right.
You can go on and on. Of the 150, they're all 159 are protected First Amendment activities.
Yeah.
You know who I
and
hold
you have to call them criminals.
I hold accountable for this mess, for January 6th and for what you're in. Not Donald Trump, right?
No.
And I go at it with some of my establishment friends, my good friends, right? About January 6th. Oh, and people should be embarrassed they were there and stuff. And you know why January 6th happened and why it happened with you is that the Republicans, they didn't stand up, right, and say, hey, you don't have to say the election was a fraud, being worried about your elections and all these politicians, but say there was a lot of irregularities that went on. There's things that don't look right. We know, we see, we hear it. We're going to look into it, right? And we're going to investigate it. They didn't do any of that stuff.
Uniparty.
They didn't, They didn't.
That's right.
So we're not saying, hey, let's go disrupt and take over in an insurrection. But maybe if they would have gave some comfort to us, to all of us, right? That hey, something doesn't look right here, and we're going to look into it. They didn't do that.
No.
Very
The
little, if
government's
anything.
going after our rights. The
No,
government is going after our rights, and nobody in the political space is fighting against that, which is why we're here. But I wanted to just close that loop on that. And
Yes.
so I know a lot of lawfare is based on precedent, right?
Right.
Like like Supreme Court rulings, that sets precedent, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So as if your life depended on it, can you explain to Republicans, Democrats, Trump haters, all alike, why it is imperative that the people in this indictment be exonerated for this?
Because if they are not, all of us will have lost the First Amendment. The First Amendment will be gone for all Americans.
Yes.
In which case, all we're left with, I'm sorry to say, is the Second Amendment. And it's very, very dangerous. Even Mike Huckabee essentially said that last week. He said, if we don't get this decided by ballots and the appropriate outcomes from this lawfare, if you will, the misuse of the government, there's only one thing left. You hate to say that, but or sound alarmist, but the fact is people do not understand. The people that are cheering on these prosecutions don't understand that they're
Right.
They're cheering on their own demise. They're cheering on the demise of their rights.
Yeah, I talk about, Stalinist Russia and Maoist China. And those are the first people, the champions of all the, the persecution. They were the first people that they threw in the gulag after they, solidified their power.
It's my Lithuanian grandmother that gave me what I have. 8 of her brothers and sisters were killed by communists, and they were priests and nuns and farmers and businessmen and teachers. Of the 8 children, that's what they did. So they got rid of the people that were in business and in farms and in education, and they literally killed them.
Yeah. So I tell my good friends about the next election with Trump, right? There's people, like in Illinois, the grassroots love him, right?
Sure.
You got our establishment friends that, he can't win the middle. We have to support Donald Trump. First of all, you did a good job. Take that out of the picture. We have to support Donald. This is bigger. This election's bigger than Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
This election is about us, our future, freedom of speech, fighting for our country, right? And if we let these radical leftists do what they did to Pastor and everybody else, they won. You know what I mean? We got to fight for you. We got to help you get your legal fees. We got to fight. We got to fight for Donald Trump, not because of Donald Trump, even though he deserves it. Donald Trump deserves another go at presidency. We need to fight to show the left that they cannot weaponize our government and attack citizens and try to push us on who we should vote for, or demonize people that are just regular citizens or parents or Catholics or whatever.
And try to indoctrinate our children against their parents' wishes.
We'll come back and do a whole show on elections. That's another circumstance. In the meantime, October 6th is when we're supposed to get the discovery. That done. We have filed what they call a motion to sever to divide Pastor Lee's case from 15 other folks on the theory that certainly the state says that they're going to have 150 witnesses. We'd be sitting there for 3 or 4 months, and only about 2 or 3 of those witnesses have anything to do with Pastor Lee. And so I would suggest to you that that's not a fair trial for him by having to sit there for 3 or 4 months while they're going through all this other evidence.
Time, money,
and
effort,
how can a jury possibly sort out 150 witnesses? Oh, say that. Oh, that one applies to that one. That applies to that.
Yeah.
Oh, that applies to that guy. No. So there's a whole lot of litigation before this ever gets to trial. We've just barely scratched the surface.
Yeah. Pastor
Well,
Lee, do
we
you have
appreciate
anything
that you're
you
in the
wanna-
fight too, David.
Do you have anything you want to say to closing statement to everybody?
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys here this evening, and I want to thank my attorney Dave for the fine job that he's done, and then I just encourage everybody to pray for our country, and I thank everybody for standing by the Constitution, the rule of law. Nothing changes about that for me. I'm not a politician. I stand on principle, and I believe I've been consistent with that. And I trust my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for me too. And I have forgiveness of sins and eternal life, and that's my hope. And I stand by that.
God bless you. Closing statement from me is what I said earlier. Tag Donald Trump Jr., Giuliani, all those guys with cash. Make sure the Give, Send, Go address is attached to the tweets, Facebook, Rumble, or whatever, and tell those guys we need them to donate. We need to pay for his defense. Please.
David, do you want to say something before I just have a brief?
I think you asked me the question, and I don't think we can emphasize enough that this case is a danger to every American around any place, whatever they're doing. And so we have to support Pastor Lee. We have to support all the other defendants. You have to get forward, but some of them have better resources. So please, please help us out. It's very, very important. Thank you guys for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Are you stepping forward? It's nice that you got so motivated, Terry, with the government stepping on you and you stepping back. That's just exciting for a dad standing up for his kids and now stepping forward for everybody's kids.
Thank you.
That's a fantastic thing. It's a wonderful opportunity that you've created to create this platform. Great for us to be here. We're looking forward to going forward and doing battle. I'll put on my suit and tie, which is my uniform.
Right.
It's
Make sure you guys all take your Metamucil later too. Okay. I just want to say thank you to these two fine gentlemen, and that our prayers are with you, and.
Thank you for your service,
give, send,
by the
go.
way.
Oh,
thank you for your service in the military.
I appreciate that
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you very much. And then I would just say, give, send, go. We have the information rolling across the banner there for Pastor Lee and his cause. And, the other thing I'd say, get involved. Like, we're losing our country. We're losing our rights. This isn't, get involved in your community and help out. Do something like Terry's doing. Thank you.
We want to thank our executive producer right here from Duck Dynasty, Jason Hayes.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
I messed up the beginning of the rumble.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please share.
Every time we pull up, you see stars, you see stripes, you see flags on the cars and the trucks and the bikes. Every time we pull up, we go hard, we outside, we got flags on our arms that are tatted there for life. Every time we pull up, we We don't care if you mad, we cherish this land. The haters can get buried in rags. They set fire to old glory, turning fabric to ash. But every time we pull up, all you're gonna see's America.